Hey everyone, how's it going today? Welcome back to another third stimulus check unemployment benefits extension update. So today I really want to just clarify certain details. I guess you can even consider this almost as like a part 2 to yesterday's video. A huge recap if you guys are brand new here or because this is a continuation. In yesterday's video, we shared the really great news about how one state has officially received a court order to bring back their unemployment, which is Indiana. The great news in today's update is that we now officially have another state that has received a court order to now bring back their unemployment. In yesterday's video, we talked a little bit about what the Biden administration has officially said now that they've officially come out. And so in today's update, I really just want to clarify certain details that people were wondering about. If you guys haven't seen yesterday's video, highly recommend checking it out. I'll put it at the end screen. It's literally just called Super Great News Now Back, because that's pretty much the topic of the video. But you could really be watching these videos in any order, whether it's this or that one first, but it's just today's more of a continuation where I really just want to clarify certain details, such as about when we will officially receive those payments to come back, when we will physically see the money hopefully deposited into our bank. I want to talk a little bit about the retroactive situation, a little bit about other states, and a little bit more about just basically where we really go from here to kind of just clarify. If you guys have any more questions about honestly just anything, feel free to comment down into the comment section, or honestly if you guys have any information at all in your state, feel free to comment that as well. And really just honestly anything at all. It's always great to say hi to new and familiar faces. So as always, real fast before we begin, remember to smash the like button because it's always greatly appreciated, and because I think it is really great news, certainly at least to most people that have been following unemployment news. Consider subscribing if you guys are brand new here for similar videos and other finance topics. Huge thanks if you guys have been here for a while, and as always, maybe feel free to comment any questions, thoughts, or honestly just really anything at all. So with that being said, let's get this video started right on the spot. So maybe to start is that we now officially have received word from just one more additional state that they will now by court order be returning their unemployment back, and that state happens to be, huge congrats to Maryland. So Maryland has officially received court order from the judge that has officially ruled that they will now be set to come back. I believe Indiana was essentially the first state that won their case, or rather the court order recently, to bring it back. I think between Indiana and Maryland, it's believed pretty much that Indiana was probably going to be the first one, just because they were also the first one to open up their lawsuit. However, one of the biggest differences, as we've kind of mentioned before, is that Maryland will probably, the great news I think to Maryland is that logistically they will probably have the easiest time to actually physically transition, or rather to continue their program, just off of the logic that in Maryland it never actually physically ended. They were able to create the injunction before it actually ended. So at this point in Maryland, it's really just about sitting still, doing absolutely nothing, and hoping everything can peacefully just continue. Whereas in Indiana, there is a little bit of a transition process because they did already end it early after all. Now, in terms of when Indiana will officially receive their unemployment back, so based off of essentially like the details and what the judge said, as we kind of mentioned a little bit yesterday, is that by what they've spoken is that they're hoping to officially restart their unemployment program by the end of this week. Now, I think it's really important to clarify, and this is something that's maybe new information, is that even though they will be restarting their unemployment systems by the end of this week, it doesn't mean that on the very first day it's just going to be a switch that they're going to flick and everyone's going to get their unemployment back. There is still a little bit of a logistical thing, but the big thing is that by the end of this week they will be taking action to bring it back, which is the really great news. Now, in terms of when you will actually physically see the money officially deposit into your bank, that information is still relatively to be determined, but it's believed that with the assumption if everything is able to roll over smoothly, or rather to come back smoothly, it will probably physically come into the bank with everything going around smoothly sometime around next week. So the end of this week, it's going to be when they continue and resume the program. You guys will probably be able to claim on Sunday because that's when the cycle starts/ends, or when they make the transition. And then with the hope of everything going on smoothly, it should hopefully be in your bank account somewhere around the middle of next week. So essentially the typical story of what's been happening from when there was still an unemployment program going around in all of these states. And then of course probably leads on to the next really common question, is really about the retroactive situation. So the retroactive situation is a little bit interesting, is that the great news is that yes, it will be retroactive according to what they have spoken. So the great news is you should be able to get payments dating back. I believe Indiana originally ended it around June 19th, and this applies for a lot of the other states too, if the other states end up winning their unemployment, whether it's through the injunction or through the court order. Because keep in mind, right now only 2 states have officially received the order to come back. But to answer the common question about retroactive is that I believe in Indiana they originally ended it, I think, about like June 19th. So between then and essentially this upcoming week, which is crazy to think almost July 19th, it's probably going to be about 4 weeks. So the great news is that you should be able to get 4 weeks of retroactive pay if you happen to be Indiana, or if the other states end up continuing on, you guys should be able to get retroactive for however number of weeks from when they continue on to the date. The only one thing I think it's really important to notice is that when they restart the systems, which is by the end of this week in Indiana, it doesn't mean that the retroactive will come immediately. And I think it's because they are still trying to work logistics. They haven't received any info, or they haven't released any particular information. All they've mentioned is that it will be retroactive, but they haven't released information about how to actually physically, or when the retroactive will officially come. So that stuff is still something that's kind of to be determined. If you guys are brand new here, maybe consider subscribing, so if we do have information we can consider sharing. And also definitely stay tuned for that if you guys have been here for a while. Huge thanks. But the big thing, essentially what's going on is that they're going to be working on the logistics to bring it back, and then they're going to be working on the logistics to kind of determine how they're going to be doing the actual retro payments. Now in terms of what maybe you may have to actually do to physically get onto the program, so the great news at this time, well I guess maybe the mixed news depending on how it is that in order for the actual state to bring back their unemployment, if you are from a state that has already ended unemployment, because if you're from a state like Maryland, then the really great news is that it should be just a continuation since you guys have been on the program already. But if you're from a state that has already ended unemployment, looking to kind of return back to the unemployment, then in terms of what you have to physically do is that on the state side, what they essentially have to do is they do have to essentially re-sign an agreement in order to kind of bring it back. So there is a little bit of a process for what they have to do. Now in terms of what we have to do on our side, at this current time they haven't released information. I think it's believed at this time the best thing to do is just to try to stay still, maybe follow up on the news and kind of keep up to updates. But if there is something that they may have to send out to do, whether this is like a quick form, whether this is to signature something, they will probably email that to you. But I believe at this time what everyone's doing is pretty much just trying to breathe and essentially hope for the best, because it is thankfully already looking a lot more promising, certainly compared to where we were several weeks ago. Now, if you happen to be maybe from a state that we haven't talked about yet, then the really great news is that because of what, as we kind of mentioned in yesterday's video about how the lawsuits and the fact that the Biden administration has set in, the belief right now is that because 2 states have now officially returned it, at least certainly at this time through court order, because they haven't actually won the case, it definitely looks promising, which is the great news. But what this really shows is that if the other states are able to maybe start to open up their lawsuit, there is a chance now that a lot of other states can come back. And what this really proves, and I think the biggest idea to really take away from this, to really clarify, is that of course in most court cases we'd ideally want to win the court case, but based off of the given situation that we're in, the most important thing is that if they're able to actually just physically open the case, so basically maybe to just get around, try to find a lawyer, maybe try to group up, and essentially to try to organize a lawsuit, or in Maryland and Indiana's case, 2 lawsuits, which is, to kind of just really confirm it, then the big thing is that by having the lawsuit happen, now that the Biden administration has set in that they're open to restarting it if there is a lawsuit open, that can potentially prolong and bring the unemployment back. So the really, really great news at this point is just if your state can file the lawsuit, they don't even have to win the lawsuit at this time. Eventually, they probably will have to, because of what's been going on. And of course, everyone, ideally, they would probably want to. But just by having the lawsuit, it should hopefully be able to bring it back until the case is solved. And at this time, most of the cases so far, certainly Indiana, in Maryland, it's looking promising and it's leaning on the side of the people. So that is the really great news. So the big thing is that you don't even have to necessarily win the case at this time. As long as the lawsuit is open, the unemployment should be able to continue. And if they're able to prolong the case, essentially just sinking the clock until maybe the date when the unemployment is supposed to actually end, which is essentially crazy to think that's actually only 2 months away because that's the beginning of September, then we can potentially now actually have the unemployment not only return, but in return for essentially the length of what we had originally been promised or believed that it was going to go on for. But essentially beyond that is hopefully that clarifies a lot of the details now about the dates, the arrivals, what we should expect about the other states and what's been going on with that. So if you guys maybe enjoyed that, maybe consider smashing the like button. If you guys haven't done so, consider subscribing, hitting the bell. As always, feel free to comment any questions, thoughts about anything. And with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. Stay safe, stay well, and hope to see you guys next time. Thank you guys so much again.